Right. Hello everyone. I am Insomnia, and I'm joined by Kenora and Stan on the couch.
Hello. Hello.
We'll get underway now, I guess, and then we can do some introductions as we're going along. Or was there
That was
something?
annoying. We're
Yep.
good.
Great.
Oh boy.
I was going to say we're not going to play in Steel Soul mode, but we don't get a choice because this is a fresh install. But that is fine. And just as you probably saw from the title screen and stuff, we will be playing in simplified Chinese. That's just because there's fewer characters and the text scrolls slightly faster. And right at the start there, you saw us open, close our pause menu, which just gave us control a little sooner, and then we instantly opened our inventory. What that does is it just uncaps our full speed and removes the hard fall animation. And that's something that is a feature of the patch we're playing on, and you'll see us using that pretty liberally throughout the run, just because it speeds up a lot of vertical movement sections.
Yeah, interestingly enough, the inventory dropping isn't exclusive to this patch. It's just made a lot easier on these older patches, because you can open the inventory at any point during the fall, whereas on more current patches it's a frame perfect trick.
Yeah, so sort of as you were touching on, Team Cherry tried to patch it out, but as is kind of a recurring theme with Team Cherry, they kind of failed at that. It was just half successful, but we have access to down patching, so we don't really mind. And this category is any percent no major glitches, so you won't be seeing like super slides or room dupes or like Garfield storage or anything, but the goal of this run is to collect the 3 dreamers, which are basically keys to unlock the final boss, and then we just need to beat that. So we'll be collecting pretty minimal equipment. This leads to a couple of quite tough boss fights and movement sections, and a couple of tricky acid skips as well, which you'll see later on in the run.
Yeah, so here's the Forgotten Crossroads, kind of the initial main hub of the world. Kind of just going through some required rooms, arenas like such as this one that lock us in. What somebody was trying to do there was hit the stalactite as it was falling to be able to knock it towards those aspids, killing them instantly.
With freeze frames there.
But sometimes, sometimes you miss it.
So that trick's a lot easier on the current patch of the game, but unfortunately there's too much time save elsewhere, so interesting side slash there. But yeah, so we have to just deal with a few of the harder tricks in order to cash in on the other time save that's far more valuable. And overall, the world record for this run is about 32 minutes, 16 seconds. It's exactly that. But we won't be getting anywhere near that. A, because I am not the world record holder, but B, because that's using a loadless timer. And what counts as a load in this game is very generous. A 40-minute RTA or so is about a 32. So we're aiming for within sort of 3 or 4 minutes of that, which is somewhat realistic if I, don't play bad.
Yeah, I'm sure
we'll
you'll do
see how
great.
that goes.
You'll do great.
Yeah. Early game, especially before we get some more of the movement abilities, our main focus is just collecting the geo that's in our path and not, taking so much damage we have to heal or anything, and then just moving cleanly through rooms, as is kind of typical for speedruns. But the run really opens up around by the time we get our 3rd movement ability.
So this is the first boss, False Knight. Not much to it, kind of just hit him a little bit until he falls over. This is one of the only bosses in the game that actually kind of phases off damage. Every other boss in the game will have those stagger effects that you sort of saw there happen based on hits, and if you hit them, it's either a large amount of hits over like a period of time, or a smaller amount of hits over a short period of time will cause them to stagger. Which we can usually get some free damage off.
Yep, and we're just coming up to our first upgrade now, which is the Vengeful Spirit. You'll also hear it referred to just as VS or Fireball, since that kind of is what it is. It's just a projectile that you shoot out, and this is our main source of damage for the run, since we won't be upgrading our nail, which is our melee attack. And it does 15 damage, whereas by contrast our nail does 5. And we can use this ability by collecting soul, which is the meter in our top left of our HUD, and that meter, when full, is 9 hits, and it costs 3 to cast a fireball, and then we get, obviously, 1 hit for each time we slash an enemy. So a lot of the run, combat-wise, is optimizing soul, getting soul, and then spending it on Vengeful Spirit casts. And coming up in the next big area, which is Green Path, you'll see a lot of that done in just like normal movement, getting soul for certain skips that need fireballs.
Oh no.
And yeah, routing that effectively to not be slowing down and to be able to perform those skips. And we are going to ignore this bench. Benches are the hard saves as well as heals, so we will be quitting out to benches at a few points during the run. But our hard save is actually updated to that bench automatically when we leave the Ancestral Mound, which is the area we're just in. So we don't have to worry about sitting on that unless we're low on health, but Mound went fine, so that's not a thing. And we just need 6 hits of soul here, and the reason we need that is to perform 2 tricks back to back, the first of which is the Elder Boulder insta-kill. This trick involves basically just placing the fireball hitbox on top of the Elder Boulder at the edge of the screen, and then because it's like half wall, half enemy, it kind of just sits there. And that was unfortunately a miss of what was a fireball skip, which uses the fact that the fireball resets our full speed in midair and gives us a slight pushback, and that just lets us cover greater horizontal distances than were intended. There's 3 of them that we do in this run, all in this split. The second, so the one coming up next, is far and away the most important, as otherwise you have to go all the way through the sort of bottom Green Path section, whereas the others just slightly optimize movement through a room.
Yeah, it's this upcoming fireball skip that new runners typically learn first, especially when doing any percent, as it's probably one of the most pivotal.
Ooh.
There is a 1 fireball back up here, but it's quite spicy.
Nice.
We got
Nice.
The other ones are just like little bits of optimization, whereas that one's basically required for like you can really go the long way, but it just loses so much time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so several minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something ridiculous like that. So again there, we had kind of low soul, so had to try that with 1 fireball, but it's not something you realistically expect unless you're sort of a top-level runner to do it with 1 fireball. But again, you sort of see how that was no big deal. We did get a RNG back up there that only loses about 1.5 seconds when the enemy's in a nice position. And we have another trick coming up here called the Moss Knight Double. And it's basically just getting the Vengeful Spirit when done correctly, which that was not. But you'll see other uses of it. You can get the Vengeful Spirit to double hit or even triple hit on certain bosses. Because enemies have 1/4 of a second of iframes, but the Vengeful Spirit lasts for half a second, so by getting an enemy to like jump back or roll past you so they stay inside that fireball hitbox, you can force them to get hit multiple times by the same cast, which is effective for soul routing, and it just greatly increases our DPS. And just using the fireball damage there to kill the Vengefly King for Geo. We don't actually care about saving Zote. And that just gives us the money that we need to buy a few things in the early game, including a Stag Station, which is basically this game's fast travel, as well as a Charm, which is really, really strong and will buff our spells. Well, spell singular in this run. So and this a double hit there.
Yeah, so this is Hornet. The first major boss, story-wise, False Knight you can skip, whereas Hornet will give us our horizontal dash ability. And as we kind of saw there as well, ins0mnia being able to really take advantage of that sort of stagger system, being able to quickly chain those hits into Hornet, and knowing how she's going to jump out of her stagger once you hit her out of it, to be able to just continuously hit and cause more of those insta staggers and just be able to chain into a very quick kill.
Not sure if you noticed, but we also got an achievement for that.
Sure did.
Yes, this is actually my casual Let's Play. I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. But yeah, the dash is just super important for speeding up movement. It is, that's why we go and get it first. You can technically get this ability we're going to get now before you get the dash, but the dash speeds everything up so quickly that you get dash and then this second ability by the time that you would normally just get this second ability if you were going for it straight away without getting dash. To give you an idea of just how important it is, making use of those inventory drops we mentioned earlier. And that trick there uses the pushback of a nail swing to give us the last little bit of distance we need to not dunk in the acid, which was originally found by Cedric, who is a really high-level runner in the community, and they've discovered a lot of really important stuff for the general optimization of the game. Hollow Knight's kind of, for any percent NMG in particular, in this weird spot where it hasn't had any huge discoveries over the last sort of 2 or 3 years that I've been in the community, but the record's still gone down like 2 minutes in a 32-minute run just because the movement and stuff's been optimized to such a high level. It's been really impressive to see. And that was Explosion Pogo, pogoing an explosive spore, and then actually pogoing the explosion itself to be able to get that little bit extra height, which saves about 25 seconds over going around.
It's another one of those things that's that variant of ePogo, as it's also commonly known, is possible really only on 1.221 in terms of speedrunning. Similarly, we forgot to mention it, but the insta-kill on the boulder is also a 1.221 exclusive trick.
Yep, and then straight after that we did Mantis Pogo, which just involves pogoing the mantises for height and saving going around, which saves about 18 seconds. And then the Mantis Claw early control to just knock us out of the pickup animation, which is just really helpful, as pickup animations are long and we're speedrunners, we don't like reading. And we just need a little bit extra geo here. We need 206 before we enter the Grosmother fight. This aspid gives us 6, and then we'll get the last little bit we need off of Jennifer.
Sten, do you want to talk about what sort of Mantis Claw lets us do?
Yeah, so Mantis Claw is a very useful movement item. It basically lets the knight wall jump, which is vertical movement, just lets you get to a lot of places in the game.
Yeah, Claw is for no major glitches, along with technically not along with Dreamnail anymore, but that involves cursed patches. But yeah, Claw is the otherwise only required skill NMG to beat the game, just because it locks so much stuff, because that is our main form of vertical movement. And we got the last little bit of money we needed, so now we can go on and kill Grosmother, which is technically a boss, but really it's kind of just an RNG cutscene, because it is very quick, very simple, and any time loss just depends on the pattern you're given. And finally using the Mantis Claw just to mess around here. So we get it and then don't use it for like an entire split.
So yeah, Grosmother, upon death, spawns out a lot of those little Grozzers, and yeah, being able to clean them up with those fireballs is super satisfying.
Yeah, unfortunately one Grozzer decided to travel north for the winter, and that's like the hardest position to deal with. But you kind of just have to live with it and accept that there is RNG in this game.
You got your first charm. Congrats.
Congrats.
Amazing.
And it's the best charm.
And it's
so
the best charm.
Yeah, I mean, this
except
is
for
just,
Dashmaster.
No, best charm.
Yeah, this is just clearly far and away the best charm in the game. It makes all of our spells' hitboxes larger, more damaging, and yeah, it's just really essential given that our spells are already
Careful,
a
you're gonna
huge
die.
source of damage.
Oh no! What?
This is
I think
very
there's an
reset.
achievement for dying or something. Yeah, I just wanted to check.
So this actually introduces us to the game's death mechanic. In certain set locations in each area, whenever the knight dies, the knight's shade will spawn. And you have to kill it to get both your money back, the geo, as well as be able to have your full soul gauge as well. But it also allows us to pogo on it and get to areas maybe unintended.
Yep, and this is the most cursed trick in the game that barely falls under the category of a minor glitch, but it does apparently, which is wall cling storage, which involves either sliding off of a gate as it disappears or having your exact alignment be close to and touching but not grabbing the wall. It's very particular, but it basically lets the game think that we're clinging a wall in midair, which lets us infinitely chain dashes as well as do a additional wall jump in the air. So while it's legal with the caveat of you can't use it to replace glitchless movement you can't use it to replace what you couldn't otherwise do without using wall cling storage. So it's strictly used to speed things up, which is
legal
a
asterisk.
kind of awkward scenario it's in, but that is the times we live in. We kind of knew about wall cling storage in a much more limited state before when we allowed it, and then we found all this extra stuff and we're like, oh, I guess we have to deal with that or invalidate like half the boards. But yeah, it is what it is, and everyone sort of has gotten used to it now, but explaining it is a little janky. And we're going to go get our Dream Nail, which, unless you're playing on a Guston patch, is basically required to beat the game, as we use this to collect the Dreamers, which are those 3 big keys essentially to the final boss that I mentioned earlier. And we're going to do a little early control here by just pausing and unpausing the game, and that should let us get out before having to talk to the seer or anything, because again, we don't like dialogue, and I can't read Chinese, so even if I could, I'm not getting anything out of it.
While we're kind of just walking back to the elevator here, is there any time for any donations?
Yep, so I'd just like to remind everyone that you're watching ASM2022, and we're AusSpeedruns, a group doing speedrun events just like this one to raise money for charity. So for this event, we're raising money for Cure Cancer's Game on Cancer initiative, a charity which funds early career cancer researchers who are working across all different areas of cancer research. If you'd like to donate, head on over to donate.ausspeedruns.com. And additionally, the Twitch revenue that we're going to receive throughout this event, which includes bits and subscriptions, will also be given to the charity. So if you'd like, that's another way that you can support Game on Cancer.
Yep, and we're just routing our soul very particularly through here to have enough for those 2 fireballs there. And then we need 6 hits again before the next sort of main enemy that we have to focus on killing. And damage here is actually fine because we're going to be taking a safety bench, as otherwise we revert back to before the shade skip, which means we'll lose all of our money, which is obviously not ideal if you're trying to finish a run. So that just means that even if the power goes out or we die or something, there's no risk of not being able to finish the run.
Yeah, so what ins0mnia just picked up there as well is one of the, a couple of them actually, couple of the relics of the game. What that allows us is we'll eventually reach a merchant in the City of Tears that we can sell those relics to get a fairly decent size of, chunk of money, as well as this boss here giving us, meant to give us 420, but sometimes some of the geo can get a little stuck.
Yes.
And yeah, relics are very handy in the geo routing of categories, of just being able to get large chunks of geo without really having to go out of the way too much.
420 geo, which holds absolutely 0 significance as a number whatsoever. We just think
absolutely, it's such a good number.
Yeah.
It's a good amount of geo to find.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you're just like, nice.
It's not a nice
really
amount of geo to find, though.
Some money. And yeah, the main reason we're collecting money so much through here is we need 2,322 geo leaving city to get the rest of the items we need to buy. just to completely finish the game quickly. And the main one for which is the Lumify Lantern, which lets us open tolls in dark rooms. Otherwise, we have to get the Desolate Dive to get Crystal Dash, which is slow, and we're speedrunners, so we don't like that. And coming up to probably for beginners, like the hardest fight in the game, and even at a top level, honestly, it's very difficult.
Certainly the most inconsistent in the enemy center
Yeah.
round. So yeah, in this patch, they have three main attacks that they can do. One that's that forward roll, which I think ideally we want to kind of see more often than not, because it's what allows us to be able to get double hits with the fireball. They also have the vertical hops, as well as just the normal nail swings of themselves.
At least there's no backwards roll on this
Yeah.
patch.
In current patch, there was an attack that the devs somehow turned off, I think, is the story. That in the most recent major patch, they turned back on finally after many years.
Yeah, so we found patch 1.2, and in 1.1, which was released in like 2018 or something, they accidentally turned after that, they accidentally turned every Watcher Knight to use the same AI as the first one that you fight by itself. And then, yeah, like 4 years later, despite everyone's casual experience not being with that buggy, back roll attack, they're like, you know what, we're gonna put it back. I know you had some other stuff you wanted us to patch, but we really feel it's important that the Watcher Knights can just social distance. We're in a pandemic.
It was actually pretty apt timing for it, yeah, now that I think about it.
And yeah, that fight went not crazy fast, but certainly not slow.
It's certainly safe, yeah.
And
You didn't die.
Yeah.
yeah, in a marathon, really your goal is just don't die to Watchers, because, as I said, they're just the boss with probably the most potential to hilariously blow up in your face.
It's just so easy to get hit by one and then be like knocked back from the hit into another one rolling towards you.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
It's so easy to just chain hits in that fight, and especially when you have to deal with 5 of them in total when you knock down the chandelier to kill the 6th.
Yeah, exactly.
You can just get comboed very easily.
And if we had any donations or anything, now's probably a good time.
Yes, we did. So we had $20 from Lim, who said, the first time I played this game, I got lost and didn't have a map. Hope ins0mnia does a little bit better than I did.
Well, she also
And-
doesn't have a map.
Yeah.
We also had $80 from Mr. Toxic, who put the donation towards Abandon Grub plus Delete Myla. So, Abandon the Grub is now at 160 and Save is at 150. So, it's getting pretty tight. You've got very little time to get donations in for that, but at the moment, Abandon is in front.
I appreciate it, because we've got to save those 2 frames.
Yeah, so that incentive will be cut off a little bit later on in the run. It's not a very long run to begin with, but we do have a couple areas to go to first. Most noticeably, it'd be really handy right about now if we had some way of going really fast horizontally, which is after we sell to Lem here, after finding him. That's precisely what we're going to go do.
Yeah, I mean, we already have ways to go fast
but
horizontally, just
faster.
not ones that won't get your run rejected.
Oh,
for
that
major
yeah,
glitches.
true. Yes.
But yeah, we're coming up to Relic Seeker Lem, who buys all of the junk that we find lying around. Literally, he's like where he lives. So apparently, he'd rather pay like egregious sums of money than go outside. But
I can relate.
I guess I could. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. But interestingly, we go from talking to Lem here to him already being in his shop. So there's a lot of theories circulating as to how Lem is actually able to teleport. These theories include Lem having the Dreamgate ability from the game, or Lem in fact being Spider-Man, and he just Spider-Mans up to the window and slides in.
Or maybe Lem is actually just the secret world record holder of any percent, and he just manages to get past us so much faster.
Is it not canon that Lem is just Sans from Undertale?
That's also true.
No, that's Dash Master.
Oh,
that's the
yes, of
Sans
course.
Undertale charm. And we need a little bit more money here. We're not actually going to have enough while we leave City, but some of the ins0mnia reroutes actually factor this in, and we'll be grabbing a Georock when we leave Beast Den, which will just give us the last little bit of money we need for the final stag. But this is just a pretty tame movement section for the next minute. If there's anything donations-wise or just something you guys wanted to say.
So just quickly, we did get a $20 donation from Slow. So thank you very much for that. And as has been mentioned a few times throughout this run, we have several donation challenges over the course of this marathon, and the one that's coming up very shortly is going to be Save or Abandon the Grub. But if you do want to see the full list of incentives, you can go to challenges.ausspeedruns.com.
Yep, and you've probably got about 10 minutes more or so for that. I'll give you a final warning for anyone that cares particularly about the grub and its fate. Only if you care about killing it, though. If killing it's ahead, then maybe I'll forget that. And so yeah, that was our Lumafly lantern. So that will let us buy the toll to get into the Crystal Peak. If it weren't for tolls, we just wouldn't get the lantern because we're speedrunners and we can just memorize that, as painful as it is, like speed. But yeah, unfortunately the tolls require that, or fortunately if you value your sanity.
Someone who has learnt dark rooms in many speedruns, they're not the best. Especially considering they sometimes also change enemy behavior as well, which is if you have the lantern or not, which is fun.
Yeah, honestly, with Team Cherry being the way they are, I'm surprised that it doesn't change enemy behavior, or like, I'm surprised the size of the little light radius you get when you don't have lantern is an FPS dependent or something, because this game you have to run it above 60 FPS, even if you have a 60 Hz monitor, just because everything's frame rate dependent, but also have to run it like 250 for it to be playable. And that trick back there was called Pogax, which was found by Axe2U, and basically it just saves 2 seconds over going around, but obviously you need the miner to cooperate. Unfortunately missed God Pixel there, which is obviously, it has pixel in the name, so it's quite tight, so we can't really be too sad about that, and it only saves about half a second.
So coming up as well is a fantastic example of the game's sort of cycles in a lot of the rooms that have environmental hazards. You'll see ins0mnia doing the room in a very specific way.
I like that.
Especially in the getting to the part where the cycles start. And casually, if anyone's played this room has some awful memories, but knowing how everything is going to interact with the world around us, we can kind of just zoom right through it, mostly, unless you go a little bit off.
Going under that platform there was Homothety Fireball. Believe it or not, found by Homothety. We are very creative in the Hollow Knight community, and that saves a whopping 0.1 seconds, so needless to say it's required if you ever want to get like, anything resembling a middling time.
Absolutely mandatory.
I'm surprised we didn't get an achievement for that one. I'm disappointed.
Does Crystal Hut really not have an achievement?
But now we can go fast horizontally.
We sure
Yeah,
can.
exactly. And so this game is a Metroidvania, and this one is very much leaning into that Metroid part. For anyone that's familiar with like the Shine Spark and stuff, very creative.
Although Crystal Hut in as a very distinct difference does. Okay, for some enemies it does, but for most enemies, you can't just Crystal Heart your way through them. You will bonk onto enemies and get hit unless they have, I believe, less than 10 health.
Yeah, less than 10 health, but also because it's a game made by Team Cherry, depending on just basically randomness, you can also just get hit out of it because it checks for your collision before it kills the enemy, which is just incredible for consistency.
Yeah, so what you might have also seen a little bit earlier there was commonly referred to as acid skips. There is an item in the game that called ins0mnia that would allow us to be invincible to acid. We can just swim in it just as much as you could water. But with some precise wall clinging and crystal hearting, we're able to kind of find that perfect spot that allows us to breeze on by. The main one will be just after this boss fight and Dreamer here, referred to as QGA, but we'll get into that when we get a little bit closer to it.
Yes, this boss is notorious for being very fair and balanced and having no RNG whatsoever. So it can either do fast or slow attacks. That was the slow attack because of course it was.
And here's another one.
And so is this one, again because of course it was. And then there is 3 attacks in the first cycle and 2 in the third. However, sorry, 2 in any subsequent cycles. However, that can increase to 4 and 3 respectively because randomness. I accidentally miscounted there because 6 is a very big number. But ideally you want a 2 cycle. This will end up being a 3. And it's very precise. It's one of the harder fights in the game in general. And it loses about 18 seconds per additional cycle. So you really want to be hitting it. So that cycle there is actually kind of hard to make with the 1 fewer nail cancels. So if I'd got the first cycle right by counting, that would have been really impressive. Unfortunately, we do not live in that universe, and instead we get to just shoot like 1 measly fireball there.
Yeah, and with Umu being able to randomly decide between the fast and slow attacks as well as the extra attacks, like sometimes you just lose time on Umu and there's nothing you can really do about it.
Yeah, even with perfect execution, the worst RNG loses, I think it's close to 18 seconds. Thankfully that's only like a under 3% chance, but basically everyone that's ran the game for any length of time has had a run that's just had that terrible RNG, and it's like, I know there's other stuff I could have done better, but I'm going to point to this as the sole reason it didn't PB. And that is the second of our 3 Dreamers, and that is the last one that is guarded by a boss. The third one is guarded just by a particularly difficult movement section.
Achievement.
Hey, okay, so just Crystal Dash isn't an achievement.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Beast Den, which is basically what replaces the boss, is still very difficult, and especially in like actual runs, because it's the final thing basically you do before the final boss, and it has so much potential to go wrong. It's just terrifying, and we don't actually recover our health between here, that movement section, or anything, all the way until we get that 3rd Dreamer. So, and on top of that, sorry, we have 5 health and there's 3 intended damage tanks. So you don't have tons of wiggle room to work with, because 0 health isn't really somewhere we want to be. And then soul routing is also super important. So if we do heal, then we're going to be eating a ton of time loss as well, just because we need that soul to kill things quickly. And yeah, there's not really any workaround for that. It's just don't get hit forehead. But this is probably the hardest skip in the game, at least this run.
In this route for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Come on. I think this is my first time playing on a non-60 Hz monitor, so I'm doing everything too soon because there is there is actually like low input delay. But we did get there without dunking and taking damage, which is probably the most important part, just because, as I said, any damage you take along here just makes the rest of it super scary, and if you're taking anything more than 1 damage, then you're having to slow down.
And so this is Queen's Gardens, probably the second most scariest area with as low equipment as we have, as I'm sure you're a bit used to, Stan, with all the randos and...
Oh yeah, this is not a place you want to be in randomizer with very little equipment. These enemies do a lot of damage.
And also require like more damage than to kill than a lot of other things we've come across so far.
Yeah, I think they're 9 hits with the nail, if I recall correctly.
8 on this patch, but yeah, spicy.
Yeah, they were buffed on recent patches.
Ah, excellent.
Yeah.
That was one of those intended damage tanks. It's just basically hitting a part of the hazard respawn plane, poking through the thorns there. That one wasn't intended. But the point of that being it just saves going around, which is a whopping 7 seconds. and is somewhat precise, but we have lineups for it, so it's nothing we can't handle.
Yeah, with this area having a lot of those dropping platforms as well, you're kind of intended to be able to be here while you have the double jump ability. However, it's just a little bit, it's just far too out of the way to get in any percent run, so kind of have to just make do with what you got.
The double jump was also technically required for the first Dreamer.
That's
but
true.
It's
Yeah.
pretty easy to get there just by pogoing one of the background objects.
Welcome to Deep Nest, what's probably known as the worst area to be in with as low upgrades as we do.
Or if you have arachnophobia.
Or if you're arachnophobia, yeah. Like, there are a lot of bugs in this game. There's a lot of spiders in this area in particular.
Yeah, thankfully, we don't see too many of them because we go fast and some of them need like time to spawn in. Unfortunately, we did take that 1 damage, so we are going to heal. And that just means that we should be at lower risk of getting completely destroyed in this next area. And just taking these platforms somewhat carefully, because if you fall here, you have to go all the way around and it loses about 50 seconds, which is, believe it or not, suboptimal.
I'm sure these guys are they're friendly, they're safe, right?
They're just vibing. Benches are good, right?
And they want to join you on the bench.
Yeah, and we're holding right all through this, not because it's time save, but because it means that the creepy music persists through the next area, and it's not very often I play with game sound on, so it's cool to actually hear that. And we're coming up to this difficult movement section, and there's 2 main enemies that we are going to kill, which are the Devouts, which have 100 health. So we do exactly that, and that works out to 100 damage exactly, but that also makes up the 2nd and 3rd intended damage tank of the split, so we have to be somewhat careful.
Yeah, because Devouts are also particularly scary because all of their attacks do 2 masks of damage. Some of the enemies, when we were in the infected crossroads as well earlier, we completely autopiloted, and that was the grub that I believe Save was ahead of.
Oh yeah, I can get on the way out, it's fine.
No, you hit it.
You already got it.
Oh wait, really?
Yeah, we just completely autopiloted and just...
Please tell me Save was ahead.
Abandoned was ahead, I'm afraid.
Okay, reload the save. Reload the save.
What was the difference?
The difference was just $10.
Alright, I'll donate $11 after this.
I can't believe we did that. Oh my god. We talked about when we were going to do it, and then we just talked about Queen's Gardens and Deep Nest instead.
I was so worried about dying in that area for this run that I spent probably, I'd want to say 20 or 30 hours over the last sort of month or so just practicing that like 1 minute section. But unfortunately, I must have been autopiloting, saving the grub every time. So sorry about that, anyone that wanted to see the grub abandoned, not least of all myself. But
yeah, like, you were hoping that it would get abandoned, and then yeah.
And we did actually pick up a small amount of incidental geo along the way, which is really helpful because it means we had exactly enough to buy this stag, so we don't need to hit that beast end rock. So any mistake we made in the back half of the run was just geo-routing, so we saved that 1 second on the rock.
The grub was geo-routing? The grub that doesn't provide us any geo?
Yep.
Yet?
Not my proudest moment, but...
We only had 2 commentators that were also keeping on top of it.
If only.
If only.
Yeah, we are one hit short on soul there, but it just means that we can't do a fireball there, but that only saves about a second if that, and the extra soul in the start of the fight is going to make up for some of that. So we're coming up to, as I sort of alluded to, the final boss of the run, which is basically your character's older sibling and is the Hollow Knight, because spoiler alert, you are not the titular character. But this boss is somewhat random, but the randomness is predominantly time loss. So if you have a good or bad pattern, you are generally going to survive, and it generally isn't too risky. There are some attacks and patterns where you can basically not avoid getting hit if you don't want to slow down, but it's very rare to get 5 of those in a single fight. If I do, I'll be sure to complain about it and deflect all responsibility, but yeah, hopefully we don't see that.
This is the other fight alongside Watcher Knights that, like, when new runners learn 80%, it can definitely be the most jarring of a comparison between your casual playthrough and 80%, just because, like, THK here is very much intended, especially when you have everything in the game, to be a bit of a joke as just kind of a precursor to the actual final boss. Spoilers. But yeah, THK is also a lot more consistent than, at least in terms of how to deal with their attacks, than Watcher Knights ever will be. So once you learn it, it's quite simple.
Yeah, exactly. And on this patch of the game, the THK fight is actually a lot slower. So anyone that's played this game casually, you might be thinking, why doesn't mine look like this? But it's just because we've discovered down patching. So yeah, if you want easy Hollow Knight fights, but with far worse equipment, join Hollow Knight speedrunning today.
When I played this fight, the Hollow Knight decided to just be invisible, so that was fun.
Yeah, that can happen with certain mods. It kind of overloads the game's memory a little bit, and it decides that the thing to not load is the model of the final boss, which not ideal.
Yeah. The Hollow Knight fight is kind of notorious for that, or just infinite loading the room. We had someone get a equivalent, what would have been a 4th place run, and then the final boss room infinite loaded, which was extremely unfortunate. And yeah, the game is basically spaghetti held together with duct tape, but we love it.
Time is coming up quite soon, though.
Yeah, it'll be 25 seconds from now, which I'll call out. I'm not going to expect you to hawkishly watch the timer. But yeah, that is Hollow Knight 80%. Thank you to my couch. Thank you to everyone here as well, of course.
And we're sorry for the grub.
Yeah, we're
gonna make up that incentive.
And I just want to give a shout out as well to obviously the Hollow Knight speedrunning community, who have been super influential, and time. And yeah, in particular, I just want to name Corm, Zero, Nora, of course, Jamie, as well as a multitude of others who, yeah, have just been super influential in getting me to stick with speedrunning, basically, and make it the hobby that it is. But yeah, I think that's about all from us.